You're listening to Solera Innovation Labs, where automotive experts from around the world discuss technology trends in mobility and debate tomorrow's rules of the road. Whether you're a technician, a dealer, an appraiser, a car lover, or anything in between, we'll discuss topics that will keep you up to date and help you and your business win.
Well, welcome everyone. We're glad you're with us here on the Solera Innovation Lab in our series with what is going to be a really exciting kickoff to a new show on the series. It is Ready, Set, Go with your host, Neal Lowell, who I can't wait to pass the mic to here in just a minute. So Neal's got a career of more than 20 years. A lot of it with Solera and some of the earlier companies, helping digitize the world, bring autonomy to bear, bring us all together around the life of a vehicle and take technology and wrangle it down into something wildly meaningful. And he's built a show that's really going to be architected towards optimizing, getting the most out of the technology and the future that's before us and here in a sensible way. And so I can't wait to start asking Neal some questions. Let me just start, Neal, by welcoming you onto the show. If I could ask you, so this is first podcast for you?
It is. Yes. Yeah. And thanks for having me. It's an amazing experience to be here talking to our audience about what technology is and how it affects our industry.
Great. We're going to get into it, but let's talk about you for a minute.
Excellent. So
tell me your story. How'd you get to Solera in the first place, and where'd your technology passion come from? And
yeah, so I grew up in Michigan, a really small town in Michigan, actually, Beaverton, Michigan, and loved technology from the get-go. I mean, even I'm into audio, I'm into video, and even kind of early surround sound days. I'm wiring speakers all up around the house, and I'm trying to automate as much as I can. And that passion carried through, university, and I went to a predominantly automotive engineering university. It was GMI, General Motors Institute of Engineering, started by GM back in the day, where they were, educating their own engineers and then bringing them in as a co-op experience on the job. So, kind of matched my combination of passion between automobiles and technology. So I went to GMI, now Kettering University, for computer engineering, and that's really where I started going hands-on and kind of honing the my experiences and my application of technology, specifically around the automotive, but also all around, life experiences. Graduated from GMI and went on to work for Sun Microsystems in the Bay Area in California. Really my first forte into the large technology sector. I mean, going into Silicon Valley and, getting the experience of all there is to offer of all the different companies and people and experiences and cultures. And worked there for a few years, moved on, and actually at that point joined Solera up in the Bay Area in California. We had software in the collision automotive space, software in the insurance space. I really saw Solera as that right mix between technology in the automotive sector and the ability to really affect change into people's lives. So I joined Solera around 16 years ago. More in the support capacity, actually. Came up through the organization, saw product management, driving the strategy of where the products are going and what we deliver to our customers and what we mean to our customers. And I said, that's where I want to be in the organization. I want to be driving the product, driving the strategy. And so, I started working my way through product management, owning one of the products, two of the products, three of the products, all the way up to vice president of product management and innovation, where not only was I directing the product, but I also took on engineering and architecture and design, QA, and really started bringing my passion into the products that we delivered, and that was bringing the customer, our customer's customer, into the mix. So looking at it not as a collision repair piece of software or an insurance piece of software, but looking at it as a software that betters the experience of the insurance customer, of the driver of the vehicle, the person who has to get their vehicle repaired. Trying to understand how we can take and evolve that experience so that not only can they, have a decent experience, but also can say, wow, that was actually a great experience. That was something that I didn't expect. And so at that point in my career, our CEO, Tony Aquila at the time, he recruited me into the office of the CEO to help grow a part of our organization called R3PI, which is focused on the future innovation that's coming down the road, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. So I joined the Office of the CEO, and I led our 3PI as the Global Innovation Officer. And that's really where I took my experience from North America and really broadened that experience. I got a sense for what we were doing all across the world, whether it's in Germany or Zurich or UK or over in China. How the different vehicle owners and their experiences, and how insurance is processed and claims are processed, and how repairs are done. And it's just broadened my horizon as far as the current state and also the opportunities that we have. And currently, I'm Vice President of Product Management for our collision and glass claims and repair solutions, where I'm taking the solutions that we have today, looking at where we are envisioning the world to be in 5 to 10 years, and plotting the path of connecting the two. Always looking at what new technologies are out there we can use, what new workflows, what new ideas people are coming up with, and how we can leverage all of that to make the lives of our customers and our customers' customers better.
Yeah, that's great. So you've been doing this over 20 years.
Yes.
You started with a passion in cars. What was your first car?
Oh, my first car was a 1998 Chevy Beretta.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what do you think are the biggest changes on the car side? We'll get to the insurance side and the high tech, if you will, but what do you think are the biggest changes we've seen in the car in the last 20 years that are, not just interesting, but maybe the impetus for future change? Like where are we really going with all this?
Yeah. I mean, in the past, it was all about the car itself. It was all about the transportation, the mean mode of transportation and getting from point A to point B. The focus was more on the metal, the engine, the combustion. It was all about the car itself, the physical car. And now it's changing to be more about the experience of the car. And I think that's one of the biggest changes in the industry, is more and more the focus from the auto manufacturers is in the software and in the experience and in the engagement. It's even leaving the car, right? It's in the app that you use with the car. It's with the key that you use, or the lack thereof of the key. And so while technology and software and code was just a very, very, very small percentage even 10 years ago, now it's estimated that upwards of 50% of the car and 50% of the value that's perceived from that car is from the software and from the experience of that car. And as innovators in the space, like Elon Musk and Tesla have shown us, is that it's no longer about an asset that you buy and it doesn't change. There's software updates that are coming to the cars. There's new capabilities that you can unlock. So I think the idea of what a car is and the responsibility and the delivery of value from an auto manufacturer is drastically changing.
Great. It sounds like that's what we're going to get into with you and your guests on this podcast.
Yeah, I have a lot of passion about that, and other technologies that are affecting other industries that ultimately will, I believe, be coming to the automotive sector, to the insurance claim sector, to the collision repair sector.
Sure. So as the car's makeup of value changes, the way we value a vehicle changes as well.
Absolutely. And as the makeup changes, the repair drastically changes. And that is a big impact in our industry, kind of getting very specific and very tactical about what are some of the challenges that we're facing. How you repair it's changing, which means the knowledge that you have to have is changing, which means the workforce on who has that knowledge or who, is getting that knowledge, who can work in these cars is completely changing.
All of this feels to me as a marketer like mass personalization. The car experience I want from the vehicle platform I want, with the upgrades and the changes to make it more mine. Is that where we're going?
I believe so, yes. So, and you see this in multiple industries. There's a level of personalization, and customers want to feel that it's about them, right? I'm not going to say it's selfish, it's just human nature. I want to know that this company cares about me, just not as an average number. I don't want to think of me as, well, I'm the average demographic, or I'm the average customer, or I'm, the average experience. I want to know that I have my experience and the company cares about me as an individual.
What about autonomy? So today we're driving, tomorrow we'll have a choice. How does that change this industry?
Yeah, I think when we look at this, it's changing it to where, again, it's less about just a vehicle being a single piece of metal, let's say, and more about mobility, right? So I need to get from point A to point B. I want to get there how I want to get there, right? So I may want to, take an Uber or a Lyft. I may want a driver to come pick me up. I may want to drive one of my cars, or I may want that car to drive myself, drive me. Depends on the situation. Depends on if I'm by myself, if I'm have a car full of people, and I'd rather focus my attention on them. So I think as vehicles get more and more intelligent, as autonomy comes more and more into play, it gives more options for how people get around. But the word option, I think, is really critical, because first of all, it's not going to happen overnight, right? As many of the auto manufacturers are showing us, this is an evolution that's going to take quite a bit of time. When you get into AI, there's all sorts of controversial topics about how autonomous vehicles handle crisis situations, right? And that's the highest level of AI, how they decide which is the best of the worst decisions. And that's a scary thing to make fully, to put in the hands fully of a computer system, of an AI engine. So it'll take time, but when as it does more and more evolve, it'll be the decision based on the experience the customer wants to have. And I think that's the important part.
Cool. So we've got autonomy, we've got digitization. What's going on with service, repair, and collision with these vehicles as they shift from being metal and combustion to also being software, high tech, sensors? How do we keep a workforce in play, and how do we make sure that these vehicles are maintaining their safety and their security?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest shifts in our industry that we're seeing, is that the workforce of the past, they know how to repair cars very well. And our average age of vehicle on the road is between 11 and 12 years old. So there's still plenty of older vehicles on the road to repair. But as the newer vehicles come out, there's a bunch of new challenges that we have to deal with. I mean, first of all, even on the metal side, where it used to be all sheet metal, we're now more and more exotic substrate materials or makeups of what the vehicle's made out of. So you're going from sheet metal to, aluminum and boron and super high strength steel and, composites of different types of metal, where there's different considerations on how to repair it. So that's kind of the advancement of the previous generation into learning new skills of the trade on the metals. But then you get into electronics, and it's a whole different ballgame, because now you have to think about what you can't see. Right? When you see collision damage that's metal, you can physically see the metal deformed. You can see where, there's gaps that there shouldn't be gaps, and, what you can kind of visually map out your repair plan. But when you get into the diagnostics, you can't see it. You can't see what the sensors are doing in the brains that they're talking to in the communication systems, and where there's, disconnected wires or communication errors happening. So you have to use new tools, modern tools, for checking on the diagnostics of the car, for understanding how to repair those diagnostics, how to fix those. And that's at the hardware wired level and the systems level. But then you get into the software complexity, and that's yet another level on top of that. So really what we're seeing is the need for a new level of workforce. You have the sheet metal evolving into the substrates, but then you have this new entrance of people that we need in the industry to help us with the diagnostics and the electronics. And largely, like any new technology, it starts very close to the base. So the manufacturers are those that are going to help, more diagnose and fix these. But, that's a more costly repair and a more costly service by specialized individuals. So we need that to get more and more into the mainstream, so that we have, we help bring down the repair costs on the newer vehicles by having more readily available technicians and repair professionals that understand all that there is in the new cars.
It's a new world, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And so there's great jobs out there into the future.
Yes. And there's going to be new jobs popping up. It's going to be a little bit while we figure out what that right person is, what the makeup of that person is. We see the shift in the collision repair industry. We see the shift in the insurance claims processing. There are roles where, for instance, field appraisers that are out in the field writing estimates, more and more as it becomes a technology-driven engagement with a customer that is more of a remote session. Instead of having field appraisers, we're seeing now it's more and more desk appraisers that are communicating digitally with customers. And it's a different mindset and a different role for those people. And not every field appraiser transitions well into the desk appraiser, because it's a slightly different need. And it's morphing the type of professionals that we have in the industry.
So cars are a big deal to those that have them, and they get them from A to B, and sometimes they might be taken for granted, but they're an important asset. And with all these changes, how do we feel secure and safe knowing that our car is being taken care of? How do we know that, and I'm speaking very specifically to car security, how do we know that these layers of physical, digital, software, and then virtual on top, and even wireless networks, how do we know that that's all going to be protected?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I had all the answers in the crystal ball, but to a certain extent, we have to pick the companies we choose to do business with, trust based on their history, and we're all going to be learning at this as we go along. And we know this is a hot topic, right? With all of the privacy, security, and you look at how much information is out there about you and how much is shared on social media and how much a company can learn about you that you had no idea was being cataloged and presented. And you take that into the automotive space where it's not just about your information, but it's about you and your family and your friends' safety as you're driving this vehicle at very high speeds. So how do you trust that it can't be hacked into? How do you trust that the auto manufacturer that you chose when you purchased the car took the right levels of protection into mind when they created the vehicle? And again, I think it goes back to understanding the manufacturer, the history, and also their kind of track record and their methods for protecting consumers. There are those car companies that are still in the evolution phase right now, trying to evolve from a physical vehicle company to more of the software driven vehicle companies. And there's those that kind of pioneer and push the envelope like, Tesla and others. So I think it's a lot about making sure who you're buying from. Same thing on social media, right? So making sure where you're posting your stuff and what they stand for and what they do and what they don't do with your data and your privacy.
Great. I assume you're going to get some guests in and talk about open source, proprietary systems, sort of the software engineering philosophies as these companies are moving into the space more and more and the cars are taking on more and more tech.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of other industries too that have adopted similar technologies and have evolved in the tech space, and some faster than in the insurance claims processing, and collision repair and the automotive sector. So I'm interested to understand how technology was adopted by some of these other industries and what they found, and what went well and what didn't go well, and what we can look for here to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes of the past, and we help push the evolution, because it's all about convenience to the user. And experience and reducing friction points and straight through processing and all these industry buzzwords, which basically means to me creating a better experience for the user while reducing costs for the entire industry. And reducing cost also helps profitability of those businesses that are involved. So if we can hit that trifecta, right, reduce costs, increase profits, and at the same time provide an extremely good user experience, then I think we've come a long way.
No, that's cool. Tell me some of the other topics. What are people not talking about that you're going to be covering or hitting on, or what are some of the key categories you're going to get into, and give people some, through your guests and through your dialogue, some context for watching and actively taking those next steps. And we're talking about the OEMs and the collision and repair shops and the glass installers, and everyone's got a piece in this ecosystem of watching what's coming and knowing when and how to leverage it. So what are the key points in addition to some of the ones we've talked about here already?
Well, my background is in product management. And so in product management, you always look at what are the challenges in the industry? What's the problem statement that you're trying to solve? And so we're definitely going to talk about what some of those problems are. We're going to hear from some of our customers. We're going to also talk to individuals and businesses that are outside of our industry to get an idea of what problems may be coming our way that we haven't thought about. But then I also want to take a step back and say what technology is out there and what technology is coming down the pipeline that may help us with those problems. And so that, the best case from product management is you identify what the critical problems are, you identify technology or solutions that can help with those problems, and you put one and one together. And so that's what, we're going to start investigating, is how do we take some of the problems we have or will have soon and solve them with today's modern technology, services, solutions, and how do we put those two together?
So at Solera, you're delivering a lot of solutions that around data, algorithms, information to the insurance agencies.
Yes.
How do you grapple with significantly new leaps in technology and bringing those things to market? And for some more context on the question, there's a saying in technology, I know you've heard it before, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Absolutely.
Yet we also have to test and learn, and we have to try. So how do you create safe space to test and learn and try? And how do you help massive insurers who are helping millions of people on a daily basis do things in a very safe, secure, responsible way as they bring in these new capabilities?
Yeah, it's a great point. There's a fine line between bleeding edge and leading edge, right? So bleeding edge technology, adopting it when it's not quite there yet, when it can do more damage than good, that's a very dangerous thing. And there are plenty of companies out there that, promote bleeding edge technology as if it's, full mainstream ready. And that's not the case in many of the times. You have to, ease into it with a group of individuals or customers that are willing to experience a little bit of, I don't want to say pain, but a little bit of hiccups along the way because they know that they're on that front edge of bleeding technology. Versus when it becomes leading technology, it's more proven, it's more stable, it's more ready for mainstream adoption that you can start rolling it out to more and more customers. And we're seeing that today in the industry where, things like visual intelligence or photo analytics, taking all the information from the photo and using that to make automatically a lot of the decisions in the claim process. So, right now that's bleeding edge technology. There's a lot of investment going around about it. We have a lot of global investment in it ourselves. It's looking very, very promising, but if you put it in the hands of customers before it's ready, it can make the wrong decisions and actually cause more damage than good. And so how you introduce it is very critically important. Introducing it so that, any hiccups or any growth pains along the way is not felt by the customers and is instead more absorbed by the system as we continue to evolve and learn from it. And so how you test, how you introduce it, and who you introduce it to are all very, very important considerations.
Sounds like the opposite side of the coin would also be a thoughtful exercise between the field agents, the appraisers, the service and repair technicians. They also have to adopt these things as well, right? So
absolutely.
In addition to being trained and certified, there's an in situ to how they actually use these technologies. Are we learning things by seeing these new capabilities hit the field?
We are, yes. And again, it comes down to who and when and how, because you don't want to shock the system too much by taking, individuals that are used to, the way of the past and all of a sudden completely flipping their world upside down. So you have to find ways of evolving and introducing it to the different individuals. But yeah, we do learn a lot because I don't want to say that, I don't want it to sound like the previous generation is done and they're gone and they're out and it's all about the new kids in town, because it's never that case. It's never a 1 or 0 switch. It's an evolution. And there's a lot that the newer generation can learn from the previous generation, and there's a lot the previous generation can learn from the newer generation. So, and adoption comes across the board. I mean, if you look at cell phone adoption, right? So 92% of all Americans own a cell phone. That's not a surprise. But right now it's 81% of all Americans have a smartphone. And that was 35% just 7 years ago. So 35% to 81%, huge technology adoption because it's now mainstream. One of the biggest adopting groups is 65 and older, which are about 60% adoption. So it's not to say that new technology is only for the new kids in town. It's only for the younger generation. It can be for everyone, but it's a mindset shift that people have to make, whether or not they're going to evolve themselves, their experience, their career into the newer generation, or whether they're going to plan their retirement in the old ways.
It's amazing to think in 7 and 10 year increments, the significant shifts in our lives. Could we imagine a time without these smartphones, right? And yet here we are just 20 years on, and the smartphone is the dominant device now.
Absolutely.
What's it going to be like in automotive in 10 years? What are we going to be talking about then that we're not talking about yet?
Yeah. So, I mean, in order to look at 10 years forward, I first kind of look 10 years back and 20 years back and 30 years back, right? And the first communication I had was a pager that, I had a one directional, communication device where I was always looking for a pay phone to make that return call. Then of course came the big brick cell phones. And then, it went down into the Razor flip phone. I think everybody had a Razor flip phone at one point in time, then the BlackBerry, then the iPhone came out. And what's coming next? I think if you look at the previous evolution, it's all about convenience and ease of access and empowerment of all the capabilities that you have. So it went from being just a two-way or a one-way to a two-way communication device to a complete computer in your pocket. And now I think the next evolution is going to really evolve how we access that convenience. So, you have augmented reality, you have virtual reality, the glasses they've been toying with the glasses with, Google glasses and such, and I think it's going to continue to evolve to where it's going to be less focus on just the phone, but more about all the peripherals around you that just connect you to everything that you want to be connected to. Now, with great power comes responsibility. And so we also have to consider all the privacy and security aspects of that, as mentioned earlier. But I think it's going to be more about wearable convenience and interacting without having to think about it. So, voice interaction, visual interaction. So it's very, very interesting time, because as it becomes more and more technology driven, it's also going to be more and more complicated to repair and diagnose and troubleshoot. And so it's an exciting time coming up.
I'm really interested in vehicle ownership and what happens in the future. These companies are now, Volvo, I think, was one of the first offering subscriptions where you can pick and choose your cars. Third-party intermediaries are building fleets that you can tap into on a rental basis or a subscription basis. And so who owns the vehicle? Who insures the vehicle? How do I get that? Because I'd love to have a truck when I need a truck and a sports car when I need a sports car.
Yeah.
Where's that going? And will we see the service economy kind of overhaul vehicle ownership as we know it?
Yeah, the industry is definitely trying to figure that out. And even the auto manufacturers, I got to give credit, for instance, to GM. Years and years and years ago, they came up with the concept of the platform car, where the car was basically just in the flat base. It was the drivetrain and the wheels, and then which platform you put on top of it, whether it was a sports car, an SUV, whatever you needed could be swapped out and changed, right? And it's that idea that it is about convenience and choice. When you want something or when you need something, you have the access to it. We see, Uber and Lyft obviously popping up, giving people more choice to get from point A to point B. You see the different technologies for sharing your car. So if I only use my car 2 days a week, why not let somebody else use it and share in the expense that's involved in the car? So I think, that we're still trying to figure out where we're going, and no one model has been a home run or been the one choice that's going to survive. And quite frankly, I don't know if it's going to be one method or one way. I think that there will be a series of different options depending on what's best for the individual and their life, their life cycle, what's relevant in their life. If you have a family, you may want less change, but you may still want that convenience, versus if you are, a college kid, where you only need a ride every couple of days, and you have no problem sharing with friends or, taking Ubers and Lyfts. So I think different life stages, there's going to be different needs, and I think there's going to be a number of different solutions, but it all comes down to convenience and options for the user.
Oh, that's great. And you've touched a little bit on Tesla, just what I mentioned earlier, but we haven't really talked about alternative energy. I assume that also brings another dynamic to ownership, valuation, repair and maintenance, the real cost of building and maintaining a car over its life. Like, where are we going to be in 10 years with alternative energies?
That's another hot topic, right? So, right now electric is all of the rage, and of course, Tesla, their vehicles have really pushed the envelope as far as what's possible, and I think it's been really good for competition, because you see a lot of the other manufacturers kind of waking up to that, or they've already woken up and now they're starting to deliver some other vehicles in that area. But when you look long term, I don't think we've quite understood the impact of the electric vehicles, because batteries are very costly to produce, and they're very costly to recycle after the fact. And so there's environmental impact as well. So you can't say, well, it doesn't burn gasoline, so therefore it's great for the environment. Well, I mean, it may be better, but there are certainly other aspects that you have to consider. And there's also alternative energies, like hydrogen power cards, which have been talked about in the past. And, you're starting to hear little pockets of information coming up here or there. So I think it's not all about electric. I think there's other alternative energy means. And it'll be interesting as to if electric remains to be the dominant kind of direction for alternative energy, or if there are others that pop up and get back into the scene, like hydrogen power cars or alternatives that we haven't even thought of yet.
No, that's cool. I really get the sense from talking to you that you're taking a very thoughtful and methodic approach to bringing new things to bear. And it sounds like the show's really going to look into banking. It's going to look into maybe even retail into e-tail, all of these shifts in industries that point the way to navigate change. Because I think at the end of the day, while bringing all these new technologies on board are meaningful, and some will win and others will be, let's just say passing moments or good ideas that weren't really as good as we thought they might be.
Yeah.
It's really the process of going through it and making choices and bringing people into the fold through that mind shift change. Sounds like you're going to focus a lot on that in the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. And there's the concept of convenience. We want it to be as convenient as possible for the users, but there's also a concept that I want to explore in gamification. And not a lot of people understand really what gamification is, and they think, well, in the business world, I don't want to play games. I want just to get it over with and have it be convenient and fast. But the concept of gamification in the business world is not only making it convenient, but also adding a bit of enjoyment, a bit of fun to it, which means that the user, when they're done with it, they're like, oh, that was, not only was that a good experience, but I would do that again. I would recommend that to other people. There are aspects that keep bringing them back into it, aspects that, grow the loyalty towards the businesses that they're engaging with. And so I also want to, talk about convenience, but also about how do we go even further? How do we make this not just a good experience? How do we make it a great experience for our users?
When you see today that luxury manufacturers are putting in mood lighting packages that allow you to shift through lights, that's something yachts did years ago. That's something homeowners have done in their front lawns for years. But again, back to personalization, or the idea that you're interacting on multiple levels. There's the functional A to B level. There's that's cool tech, that's great. But then there's also just fun, right? Mm-hmm. And work is play with purpose, and we all want to enjoy ourselves, not just have convenience. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the basics, life is a game, right? I mean, you have different levels and you have different experiences, and you have moments of success and smiles, and you have moments of pain and tears, and at the end you want the good moments to outweigh the bad moments. And as technology and service providers, I take it as our mission to make sure that we provide those good experiences to help people have a better experience through life.
That's great. And we've talked a lot about the consumer experience, as well as the supporting cast in the industry that takes care of them for the life of their ownership of vehicles, so the insurer, the repair, et cetera. What about on the fleet side? Are you going to get into the changing dynamics in fleet management and the big rigs, and what's cargo hauling look like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, anything about automotive is really in a big shift, and I don't, to your point, I don't think a lot of people that are driving automobiles really think about how that affects the commercial industry, but it affects them, just as it's affecting us in the individual, and sometimes even more so, because as technology becomes, increasingly involved in how we transport goods from point A to point B, that also means, again, the security and the importance of that security increases. It also means that we have to make sure that the drivers that we have that are in charge of these fleets, they're qualified drivers, and they have the tools to stay safe and to stay productive, and increase their ability to do their job with an experience. I mean, to be behind a wheel of a big rig for the amount of hours that they do, there's a lot to consider to help bring the newer generation into that workforce. Through more engaging, gamified ways of promoting good behavior, through the introduction of more and more technology and autonomous capabilities in these vehicles to help protect when things do go wrong, to minimize any risk of injury or damage. All of these technologies can help the fleet at a much larger scale, because when those vehicles are damaged, and or when they crash into something, the damage, the cost, and the impact of that is at a much higher multitude of than the automobile.
Well, we've talked about a lot. Your podcast series is going to be awesome, and I'm excited that it'll be loaded with guests. So you've shared a bit about some of the industries, but any particular guests you'd be willing to hint at, or just as a recap for everyone, the types of individuals you will be having on?
Sure. So, close to home, there are certainly individuals within the insurance industry and within even the collision repair industry that are pushing the envelope as far as what it means to do business with customers. Whether it's the services that they provide, going outside of the box to say, it's not just your car that I'm going to repair. I'm going to give you an entire experience from end to end and offer you services that you didn't expect from your collision repair professional. But I'm also going to look at other industries, as mentioned, that have pushed the envelope in the technology sector and how they got adoption, how they chose the technology to push out, what they learned from that we can learn from as we push out and as we make available new services and technology. So, and then there's the raw technology aspect, right? So what is the phone going to evolve in? What's the next level of experience? Is it going to be AR and VR? Is it going to be, connected, implant style technology? What's out there that we can look forward to? So even in the raw technology sector, I'm going to speak to some individuals that are pushing the envelope there.
That's great. It's ready, set, go. Neal, I can't wait. Lots of great guests, amazing topics, and a walk into the future that has practical use every day for the people that listen. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Great. Well, thank you again for doing it. It's important. And for everyone out there, thank you for listening. We're so glad to have you with us. We're always open. So please do reach out and let us know what you'd like to learn about, who you'd like to hear from. And we'll do our best to make sure that those topics are covered and engaged in this dialogue as we go through the journey together.
Solera Innovation Labs is a podcast produced by Solera, a global leader in data-driven solutions and services. Solera collects and translates complex data into actionable insights for automotive, identity, and property partners across 90 countries and counting. Learn more at solera.com or find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.